us into the next scene, which looks to be set in the post-apocalyptic world of Ooh. In fact, it looks pretty similar to the way we see Ooh in Everything Stays, before all the humans leave and Marceline is still in the land of Ooh trying to fight off all the vampires. Speaking of the vampires, this scene offers us 3 characters that we know, Cake, Simon, and Fionna, but 3 characters that don't look so familiar, but we do know them. These are the vampires that we see in Everything Stays, and they'll actually come up later in this official trailer. Okay, I honestly have no clue what this scene is. We've never seen these monsters before, and I don't even know where to go from, so please let me know what you think in the comments. This next scene is actually a lot more familiar. It's the same backdrop that we see when that sea creature tries to fight Simon, except this time it's a bear. So maybe Simon traveled into some weird green, luscious, vibrant tree and has to fight off all these monsters, but this is definitely from the same place. We've seen this before. In fact, this is one of the first images that we saw of Fionna and Cake, and remember this backdrop because we actually do know where this place is now, but we'll talk about that later. And then we see a bunch of explosions, which is kind of hard to make out, but if you do go frame by frame, you see that these are the garlic bombs that we saw in the Stakes miniseries. And later in the official trailer, we might understand why these are being used. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. And then we see Fionna falling from the Bee and Puppycat universe, and bam! This is starting to look a lot more familiar with Fionna in her bedroom, and still complaining that she doesn't want to go to work.
I don't want to go to work.
This is a very common theme throughout this official trailer, and that Fionna is very miserable in this life. Speaking of, she's walking down the street explaining how everyone's boring, and who's that? Come on, that's our boy Lemon Hope. He actually hasn't changed that much, but you gotta love Lemon Hope. And then we see the same old shot of the human Prince Gumball, but we do get an updated look at Marceline, and let me tell you, they nailed his character. And then we get our first zoomed out new look of the city that Fionna and Cake are living in, and let me tell you, this city is glitching out. And this isn't even it. There are so many more glitches later in the trailer. And then we get our first look at Simon and the little girl that we don't know the name of yet in the land of Ooh. But this little girl is talking to Simon and asking him why he stopped making these Fionna and Cake stories. And he says he didn't make them. The Ice King made them, which is what I alluded to earlier when we saw the sneak peek, that his shop was closing and the Fionna and Cake story was in the trash. He hates these stories because it reminds him of who he was, the Ice King, and not who he is now, Simon. And then we just get a shot of Ice Fin. Like, what? In the episode crossover, he shouldn't have the ice crown anymore. So what happened? Well, I'll talk about what I think might happen. So many glitches. And then we cut to Fionna at her job as a tour guide on this bus, and she's talking about how she keeps having this dream. And then we get these amazing shots of the Ice King. Well, actually, he kind of looks like Simon beginning to turn into the Ice King. He doesn't quite look like Ice King yet, but also he doesn't look like Simon because he has the crown on. And then we see Fionna and Flame Prince confirmed, but this isn't it. We're gonna see more of Flame Prince later, and it's crazy. And then we get another bombshell because who is this? It looks like Princess Bubblegum, but not at the same time, and she has fangs. Is this the daughter of Princess Bubblegum and Marceline? Could be, but this character I think will actually be super important because I use it to explain what we see later on in the trailer. So remember this character, and also remember that she still has a crown. And then we see a ton of gender-bent human characters from the land of Ooh. Abracadaniel, don't know who that is. Starchy, Fern, that's right, that has to be Fern back there. And then, I think we know who this is.
I dream a lot about being a hot dog.
Which makes me a little upset because I predicted that this bus was Hot Dog Princess, but obviously I was special, which makes you think, why her? But then we cut to this beautiful field, and I'm guessing this is where the wish took place. Because come on, blowing on a dandelion, we've all done that after we just made a wish. And then right after that, we cut to the land of Ooh, because in the marketplace, we've seen these characters before, and Fionna looks downright shell-shocked. But notice how she's still in her work uniform, meaning she came directly from her world into this new world. And if you thought everything we talked about was filled with secrets so far, don't get me wrong, it is, but oh my gosh. From here on out, there are so many things to talk about, so stick with me. The first one being them popping up in a cornfield, which we will see more of later on in the trailer, and then we see a shot of Fionna, Cake, and Simon in what looks like a post-apocalyptic land of Ooh again. But what this actually reminded me more of is the spiky village that we see in Gut Grinder. Remember Sharon?
Yes,
Cameron. I've been stealing gold.
Why, Sharon?
Then we cut to all these animals, which, if you're not aware, we've actually seen them before in the episode Up a Tree. And one thing I want to point out here is that we know this is in the land of Ooh. But if you look at Cake, it's not the Cake that we know. It's still the Cake from the real world. So I wonder if this means that when they first get transported to this new world, they somehow undergo this transitioning period in which they become more magical because they're in a magical talks to Fionna, and Fionna is downright surprised because Cake used to be a normal cat. But if you remember, Fionna has her uniform on, meaning this is when they just get to the land of Ooh, meaning there was no transitional period. This is very confusing for me, and I still don't really know what it means. So please let me know in the comments. And then we get our first new look at Prismo and his time room. He doesn't look too good.
These two are a long way from home.
Now, a couple things here. He's definitely talking about Fionna and Cake as they are a long way from home, and he doesn't look the best. But why? Well, I think we'll get an answer to that later in the trailer. And then we cut to the little girl flying Fionna and Cake out from whatever this new hub island is. And we actually see what happens later in the original sneak peek. Now, what could this mean? Well, here's what I kind of think. We know that this little girl is in love with the stories of Fionna and Cake that the Ice King wrote. And once Simon stopped making them, she didn't have any new material to read. So I think she somehow transported the Fionna and Cake from their original world to her world. Now, I don't know how she did it. Maybe she herself went to the Prismo's time room and made that wish, and it coincidentally perfectly lined up with Fionna's wish with the dandelion, or who has some new magical tech that you can hop through different dimensions and multiverses. Don't know, but what I do think is that this little girl somehow got Fionna and Cake to her world and removed them from their original world. And then we just see some more shots that we saw from the sneak peek, and then an updated shot of Fionna and Cake running down the time room with Prismos on all sides. And this is our first look at what I think might be the new antagonist that we first heard about when this show first got announced. And just look at it. He's got the classic villain look. His voice is deep. He just screams villain.
Come here!
But who is this villain? Well, I actually think we might know, and it's from his first lines of dialogue.
You two are a disease.
He's most likely talking about Fionna and Cake, who are now in the world of Ooh and not in their original universe. And who do we know gets mad when things in their original universes shouldn't be there? That's right, Prismo's boss. Now, this is a very early speculation, and I could be totally wrong, but from what we've got to go on, this could very well be the elusive Prismo's boss that we've all heard of. And we actually see him even more throughout this trailer, but more on that in a little bit. And then we see Fionna and Cake looking all scared, presumably from what that red guy just said. But look at the background. They're in the time room still, and that red guy was negatively too. And it's from this scene right here. Keep in mind the time room in the background, same hue as before, Fionna and Cake looking all stressed, and Simon. And we actually do see Prismo right there. But what could they be reacting negatively to? Well, I'm guessing once they got into the time room, Prismo showed them what their universe will end up like if they stay magical in the land of Ooh, and it's probably gonna go kabooey. And that would explain why Simon's there. We know Simon tried to get Betty back after she transformed into Gold Betty from Prismo, and it didn't work. So now they're both just sulking in the time room. So that initial reaction from Fionna and Cake looking scared wasn't from the red guy, but from Prismo telling them that their original universe is going to implode if they stay in the magical land of Ooh. But let's get back to it. We see more of the red guy actually fighting, which we did see in the sneak peek, but this time we actually see more shots of him fighting Fionna and Cake and Simon, meaning that he's definitely after them. Then just out of nowhere, we see Princess Bubblegum, just out of nowhere, but she looks a little different. And if you notice the background, it's the same ice cream universe that we saw in the beginning when Fionna and Cake was fighting off those bananas. And we'll actually see more about that in a little bit. And then we see our beloved Bimo. He's not gone, thankfully. And then we see Betty. Not Gold Betty, but Betty. And oh my god, this is huge. I can already tell this new Fionna and Cake series is going to mess with my emotions big time. And then if Betty wasn't enough of a shocker, we see Marceline, and she looks evil. And then, you know, if Betty and Marceline weren't enough of a surprise, this is most likely human version of Huntress Wizard. Just has to be. But one detail that a lot of people overlook is look at the tip of her arrow. It's not an arrow tip. It's a piece of garlic. And what do we know hates garlic? Vampires. And if you remember, we did did see those vampires in the very beginning. Not only that, but the scene right before this is Marceline. And most people actually believe that these two scenes aren't related. But that's where I disagree. Look at the background of Marceline's and compare that to the background of Huntress Wizard's. Come on, they are the same. I believe Huntress Wizard is definitely shooting at Marceline. But why? Well, I think we can get our answer from these scenes. Notice how the vampires are going down and to the right, and then Marceline is going down and to the left, and Huntress Wizard is on the ground, meaning that the vampires aren't attacking Marceline, they're attacking who's ever on the ground, together. And look at the backgrounds too, they're all that dark maroon color. Now what's happening here? Well, it looks like this could be an alternate universe, where Marceline, instead of killing off all the vampires, became the Vampire Queen, which is kind of strange because her name was always Marceline the Vampire Queen, but we never saw her as the Vampire Queen. And in the trailer, we actually do see her kingdom right there. Notice the maroon clouds? It's the same universe. And Marceline is now the official Vampire Queen, right? But no, because Simon, Fionna, and Cake are in that same universe. And Simon still has that gray streak of hair, meaning it's after the events of Come Along With Me. Very interesting, and I'm wondering where this is gonna lead to. And then we see the ice thing again. Now, a lot of people have taken this and assumed that this means we're gonna get scenes from 1000 years later. But that's where I disagree, because if you remember 1000 years later is very dull and bleak. There's not a lot of color going on. Yes, the Ice Kingdom from this scene and 1000 years later is the same, but I just think that the Ice Thing made his kingdom like this probably in the span of a year. I still do believe that this is probably a couple years after Come Along With Me, not 1000 years later. Just because look at the colors in this scene. It's still a very vibrant green. Compare that to 1000 years later, and there's a big difference there. Then we see the mutated banana guards, but still remember this again because we get another scene of it later down the line, and what I'm about to talk about next is mind-boggling. That scene being Simon running through a forest, nothing crazy just yet, and then we get a close-up look of Simon, but if you notice one thing, Simon doesn't have that gray streak of hair. What does that mean? This is 100% a flashback before Simon found the crown, before Simon became Ice King. But you know what nails this home? The very next scene. Simon stopping Betty from getting on a bus to the airport. Now this might seem like a cute little scene between Betty and Simon, but oh no, it's much deeper. Think back to the Temple of Mars episode, and then the final trial is Betty confronting her past self. And what do we see past Betty's self doing?
6 months studying ancient petroglyphs in the outback? I never took that trip. I met Simon the next day, and he was just so amazing. I put everything on hold to help him search for the Enchiridion.
Cut back to the official trailer, and this is the scene that went down. Simon stopped Betty from getting on the bus to the airport to go to the Outback, but cut back to the Temple of Mars episode. And what does Betty do? She changes the date on past Betty's plane ticket to that very day, so she could take the trip to Australia and never meet Simon.
You'll thank me for this later, past Betty. Okay, gotta go. My flight leaves in an hour.
What this means is still unknown. Whether or not this scene that we see in the official trailer will actually be Betty leaving, or if it's actually Simon stopping Betty for reunion scene. First, I have to give credit where credit is due. I would have never noticed this if it wasn't for @GladiatorGrave on Twitter posting about how Simon in the forest running scene is holding something in his hand, and it looks like a note, or at least a very small piece of paper. Now, what does this mean? Well, it's actually part of Simon and Betty's introduction. I'm just gonna let this play out.
Remember how we met when we both reached for the same book in the library, and when you returned it, you left a note inside because you knew I'd borrow it next? It was the funniest, smartest note I've ever read.
This is huge and almost confirms that it is a flashback, because that's probably the note that Betty left Simon, as Simon is desperately trying to catch Betty from leaving. Again, I gotta give credit to where credit's due, to @GladiatorGrave on Twitter, so thank you. Like I said before, this new series is definitely gonna play with my emotion. I can just tell. But on a better note, we get another look at the human Prince Gumball Marceline. I'm so excited. And then we see a bunch of action shots that we actually saw in the sneak peek, and we see that chicken again. There seems to be a lot of focus on this chicken. He was in the official trailer and he was in the sneak peek, and I don't know what it could mean. I don't think we've seen this chicken before. I am clueless. Please let me know in the comments. Okay, now remember from the beginning of the trailer when I said that this looks like the Spiky Village? Well, we get another look into the village in question, and it turns out it's not the Spiky Village. It's filled with humans. But one thing to note here that I think will be important in the future, just look at the character designs of these humans. They are very different compared to the humans that we know on the land of Ooo. Even the humans that we see on Hub Island, these have a very different art style to them. Not just art style, their proportions as well. They do not look like humans from the land of Ooo. Compare that to the next scene where we see Fionna and the human Flame Prince. Even these humans have vastly different art styles. I think this will end up being very important, and I think it could be used to tell that there are going to be a lot of different multiverses in play in the series. But yeah, I know I already mentioned it, but we do see Fionna and the human Flame Prince, which we missed out on in the sneak peek. Oh yeah, and did I mention that Finn and Jake are in this? Yep, old Finn and Jake are in this trailer. And if you look, the old Finn has the tattoo of Jake on his chest. When we first saw this in Obsidian, we all thought, even me, that Jake probably died. But this makes us think otherwise. What could this mean? I am so excited for this series to come out. And you best bet I'm gonna cover it right against the red dude. You can kind of make out his form in the flames. But what if I told you that this isn't Finn? At least Finn from the land of Ooo. This is the Finn from Farm World. But how do I know this? Zoom in on his face, and his nose is a triangle. Something only Finn from Farm World has. Now think back to the Farm World Finn that we saw in the beginning with the ice crown. This most likely is just a flashback, which is good, because that would mean a whole lot of things. Simon, Fionna, and Cake most likely ran into Farm World Finn, and that was Farm World Finn telling them his history. We actually see Farm World Finn again for a very brief time chopping some wood. And then we see another universe with tree trunks, and then we come back to this mutated candy dimension with Fionna and Cake fighting their ways out. Now, what could this mean? Because we do see Princess Bubblegum in the trailer, but we also see someone who looks kind of like Princess Bubblegum, but not really. So there are a couple things. That person that we saw that kind of looks like Princess Bubblegum and Marceline's kid, this could be a multiverse where she is the ruler and not Princess Bubblegum, and everything's taken up to the extreme. But what I like to believe is that Princess Bubblegum and Marceline did have a kid, and she took over rule and turned Princess Bubblegum's kingdom into an absolute mess. Because we do see Princess Bubblegum in the trailer, but she looks a little odd. My guess is she's either taken a little bit of the dum-dum juice, or she just loves her child so much that she doesn't care what she does with the kingdom. That's very speculative, but that's kind of all we got to go off of. But please tell me what you think in the comments. And then we get one of the final scenes of the official trailer, with Cake and Fionna both looking at each other contently, followed up with adventure time. Now remember, this is the timer that we saw at the very beginning, when Prismo broke the news to them that their universe will implode if they don't return to it. So the final shot of the trailer is most likely towards the beginning of the actual series. And then we cut to the title card. But did you think this trailer was over? No siree. I'm just gonna let the last part play out for you.
Everything bagel, right where I left it.
And that's the end of the first official trailer. Could have been wrong, but that's where you all come in. So please, let me know what you think. Did I miss something screaming out at me? Please let me know. Do you think some of these scenes could be explained differently? Again, please let me know your thoughts. I'm so excited for this series to come out, and I honestly am probably going to be talking about it until it comes out. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Please like the video if you like the video, and while you're down there, why not hit the subscribe button? It's totally free and it helps me out a lot. But as always, my friends, stay adventurous.